Let's turn back now to our top story and those talks aimed at finding a ceasefire for Gaza, notably that meeting in Washington between President Donald Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. To get more insight on it all, we can speak now to former Israeli ambassador to New York and foreign policy advisor to multiple Israeli prime ministers, Mr. Alon Pinkas. Thanks so much for your time and joining us here on France 24. Listening there to the US President Donald Trump, he clearly hopes to be able to announce a ceasefire. How likely do you think that is? How close might we be getting?
Oh, good morning, Eve. Likely, yes, because Trump wants this too much for it not to happen. On the other hand, there was an expectation that the ceasefire would be announced a few days ago, and then, perhaps more importantly, that it would be announced jointly by President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, while Netanyahu is visiting him in the White House today, Monday, this evening. This afternoon in the U.S. That's not going to happen. Well, very likely not going to happen, because there seem to be several major stumbling blocks, and we can go into them if you'd like. But the important thing here, Eve, is to understand here, Eve, is that Prime Minister Netanyahu is doing this because he's under severe pressure from Trump, particularly after Trump joined in the Israeli attack on Iran 10 days ago, or 2 weeks ago. But he himself is extraordinarily reluctant and uneasy with this agreement. He'd rather this agreement did not come to fruition.
So Netanyahu then just trying to appease Donald Trump by looking like he's making the effort? I mean, what level do you think then of influence does Donald Trump actually have over Netanyahu?
He has enormous pressure. If he wants this to stop, he's going to pressure Netanyahu, and Netanyahu will stop this. Because Israel's dependence on the U.S. is big, and it is only increasing, and has increased exponentially during the war in Iran. But there's something perhaps a little broader here that our viewers need to understand, or I would be happy to detail. That is, this goes to the heart of how both sides define victory. While Israel claims that a victory means the destruction, the annihilation, and the removal from power of Hamas, for Hamas, a victory is defined as just standing up and being negotiated with. This is the part that Mr. Netanyahu cannot accept, because while the devastation in Gaza, as you're showing in the background, is immense, Hamas is still there. And if there is an agreement that is being signed, even though it's partial, and even though the ceasefire is limited to only 60 days, it is done with Hamas. And so that makes Mr. Netanyahu's task of declaring total victory, as he likes to call it, almost impossible. Secondly, and that too is an important issue, supposedly after the 60-day ceasefire and the partial exchange of hostages for Palestinian prisoners, the two sides are going to have to enter into a permanent ceasefire and a post-war political framework. The question is Hamas included there, which Israel cannot allow, or is Hamas not included there, which Hamas would obviously object to and refuse to proceed? So we're looking at a very, very tenuous and precarious situation.
Well, listening to Mr. Pinkas, it doesn't sound like the war will ever end.
If you ask Netanyahu, it won't. It could end if President Trump decides that he's had enough. Aside from the fact that he promised to end the war, but he also promised to end the war in Ukraine, and that didn't work. Mr. Trump has enormous levers of power and pressure over Mr. Netanyahu. If he wants this to end, it will end. Left to his own devices, Mr. Netanyahu would like to perpetuate the status quo, meaning no agreement, no post-war political framework, no Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, just the status quo. And if that is the situation, then your question, or the premise of your question, Eve, is absolutely right.
And what then, happens all these Palestinian peoples? I mean, we already have an official death toll at least 57,000 Palestinians. Every day we're seeing women, we're seeing children being killed. How does Israel continue to justify that? How does it continue to justify starving a civilian population, not letting baby formula into Gaza?
Look, I can justify the war. I can justify why Israel needed to retaliate even massively. If you're asking me to justify why it's been prolonged for a year and a half and why it is still taking place, I find it extraordinarily difficult to justify. There are no political ends here. There are very few military objectives that remain. A few is an exaggeration. There are almost zero military objectives. The only possibility that Israel has to actually remove Hamas entirely is to comprehensively occupy the Gaza Strip. And if you occupy it, you own it, meaning that the devastation that you're showing now, the starvation, the hopelessness, the medical aid that is in critical short supply, all of that will be Israel's responsibility. So Israel wants to have it both ways. Not to occupy the Gaza Strip, because that's very difficult and burdensome, but leave the status quo. And so if you're asking me again, how do I justify the war going on? I cannot justify, because I think it has exhausted every legitimate purpose that it had, and it is just going on now for Mr. Netanyahu's political expediency and political interests.
Indeed, a lot of people say it's only ongoing now because of the corruption trial that Netanyahu is facing. And we have heard Donald Trump allude to that, saying that he thinks that trial could be quashed. I mean, could that be the out that is on the table?
Well, if that happens, yes, it could be the out. But if that happens, it's right out of a mafia movie. I mean, a prime minister that's saying, cancel my trial, and so I will end the war. But if you don't cancel my trial, then I won't end the war. And I have a great buddy, a great friend in the White House who thinks the same. That would be a first in modern history for this kind of blackmail and extortion. Could it happen? Yes. Everything. This is the Middle East. I mean, we're talking about Netanyahu and Trump. Anything is possible.
Indeed, in 2025, it certainly appears so. Mr. Alon Pinkas, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you so much for bringing us your analysis of the situation here on France 24.